We find ourselves again today in Lyme Regis, and we're going to go for a walk along the beach to look for fossils, but in the opposite direction to last time. So last time I went that way towards Charmouth. This time we're going to go along in front of the cliffs towards Pinhay Bay, which is only accessible at low tide. The tide is falling, so we should be okay. Right, that way will do. So the beach is composed of quite large flint cobbles. Where we're walking today is along there. We're going to be visiting the Ammonite Pavement, which will be exposed at low tide. There's a very strong onshore wind. Now, there was a storm last night which didn't quite clip this part of the UK, but you can tell the weather is quite stormy, so that's good for us because the stormy conditions will have turned over all of these gravels here and hopefully expose some new fossils. Walking conditions are pretty lumpy in places, but we managed to find a relatively flat bit of sand. That's where we're heading, over there. And round the corner of this headland here is Pinhay Bay. Not many people go there because, well, it's only accessible at low tide. We've timed our visit to coincide with the low tide to give us time to get in there, have a look around and get out before the tide comes back in again. So we've got the fossil hunters down here looking around amongst the rocks. Good place to look. Shut up. Good place to look. But we're going all the way around there. This is the Kimmeridge formation, which I recently learned is known to geologists as shales with beef. Shales are the thin layered sediments, the beef is the thick layer of kind of sandy sediment. We'll have a closer look at that when we get closer. The next part of our journey is going to be picking between these boulders. Now, here's an interesting thing. This is a mineral called Lyme Bay agate. It's actually a form of chalcedony, but you can see here it sometimes has a kind of lilac colour. Far too big a piece for me to take away today, but if I find a little piece of this worth tumbling, I might pick it up. Jenny's found the first recognisable fossil. Oh, well done. Little ammonite in a piece of limestone there. So most of the fossils are probably to be found up and amongst those boulders, but we've got an objective to try to get around that corner there. I'm not sure we're going to make it today, but we'll see. So I'm down here on the sand and these limestone strata, which are all just starting to be exposed by the tide, creating this rather artificial looking pattern, but this is completely natural. So yeah, this is the structure that is referred to by geologists as shales with beef. So the shales are the darker grey in between, finer layers of sediment, and the beef is the thick layers that you can see protruding out, slightly more resistant to weathering, and actually ends up becoming all of these boulders. So I don't know why they call it beef, but they do. And the ammonite fossils are found in all of those layers. Often they're found as nodules inside the shales, or they're found as kind of stony fossils or imprints in the beef layer, often at the bottom of the beef layer. And he's found quite a big fossil to look at. Well, clearly somebody's put that there, haven't they? Somebody's been, oh yeah, there's one. So that's in the what they call the beef. Yeah, so there's several ammonites in that layer there. We should find further on, oh, there's a bigger one there. So here's some that are a bit bigger, but also quite worn away. So you can see the chambers inside the ammonite shell there, and there's another one there. I imagine probably lots of them in amongst these boulders, but I'm not going to try and walk over these. This is leg breaker country, so I'm going to get back on the flat stuff. Very, very rusted and decayed piece of old rail there. I think there might have been, oh yeah, look, there's an old railway track that must have gone along here. Presumably some sort of quarrying, or maybe something military. But yeah, there's the remains of an old railway track. How about that? So we're on the start now of the Ammonite Pavement. So there's a kind of, possibly a nautiloid. But yeah, there are quite a few traces of ammonites here in the rock. Not all of them completely recognisable, but I understand things get clearer as we go further along. But we've got to kind of get across all of these boulders. Here's a very large one. I would say bigger than a car tyre. That one. Rather nice specimen. I did also see one over here. Now we're not here to try and pick up fossils today, although if I find any nice small specimens I might. By the way, if you're wondering why Eva's barking, she wants me to throw something, but obviously that would be a terrible idea. Yeah, she'd go and break a leg or something. Anyway, there's another piece of that Lyme Bay agate, another big chunk, and here's why it's called pavement, not artificial pavement. This is just one of these layers that happens to be at this level that we're walking on, and the sea has scoured off the top but left this harder rock underneath. But quite interesting landscape, a little bit easier walking here. And if we look carefully in amongst all of these smaller rocks here, we might find something that's eroded out. So we might find loose individual ammonites, or urchins, or belemnites, perhaps ichthyosaurs. There are a variety of fossils to be found here. Hoping we might find an ichthyosaur vertebra today. That'd be nice anyway. I see a very large ammonite there that's weathered out. I'm surprised nobody's taken that away, although it would probably take two people to carry it. But there's one that's kind of loose. I've decided today my yardstick for what I'm prepared to carry today is, if I can pick it up with one hand and it's a loose fossil, I'll allow myself to take it home. If it takes two of us to carry it, or if it's two hands, or if it's a massive chunk of rock, it's going to stay here for people to enjoy. So I'm only going to take small loose fossils home with me today if I find any. So you can see some of this cliff is actually quite precarious. This is nowhere near as dangerous as the cliffs at Seatown. It doesn't just fall down suddenly, but you can see there's a fairly freshly fallen block there that's got no rounded edges at all on it. That's fallen down quite recently, and obviously all of this loose material here, this wet material, has just slumped down and weathered off of the cliff and maybe come off the top as well. So as per usual, I won't be lingering right at the bottom of the cliffs, but the risk here is not quite as severe as it is at Seatown, where you've got sandy cliffs that just suddenly fall in huge mass. Oh, Jenny's found that's like a big nautilus, isn't it? There's another piece of this Lyme Bay agate, which, as I say, is just really, it's a form of I think it's called waxy chalcedony. It's not actually waxy in feel, but when it's shattered it has a waxy appearance. It can be polished quite bright and smooth, so as I say, if we find a decent bit of it, I might take it home, polish it in the rock tumbler. We shall see. Here we go. This is what I had in mind when I heard the words Ammonite Pavement. So everywhere we look here, there are traces of ammonite fossils. The whole surface, all of these circular features here are ammonite fossils all around. Oh, that's quite spectacular. Great big one there. And the good thing with these, they can't really be chiseled out and taken away, so it's quite nice because people don't collect these. They don't try and take them home. I suppose you could come along and cut a big slab, but these are just kind of here to be ogled at and observed and enjoyed in situ without messing around with them, which is nice. So there's one there that's not been quite so weathered, so we can see a bit more of the fossil. But yeah, they are everywhere. This is the Ammonite Pavement at Lyme Regis. Here's a pavement with a different kind of fossil in it. These are little, probably bivalve shells, although they could be brachiopods, but I think these are like little small oyster type of shells, something like that, oysters or clams. Yeah, I think it's relatively safe here to go and have a look. So yeah, shales, beef, shales, beef, shales, beef. I didn't bother to look up. In fact, it's quite a difficult thing to search. Why do they call it beef? Because beef is such a common term online that you can't, well, I couldn't find the answer, so I didn't bother to dig any deeper than just understanding that's what this is called. So do let me know in the comments if you know why this thick rock here is called beef. This is interesting. So we've got little, that's almost like a geode inside of that formation there. That might have been a fossil, so that might have been an ammonite. We're looking at it end on, and you've got the kind of crystallized fossil inside. There's another one up there which does look a little bit more biological in origin. I think we could speculate that's the kind of end view of a cross section through a nautiloid. I'm not going to go underneath that bit. Alright, so, oh, there's a very interesting rock with lots of finely detailed specimens in it. Right, so across these rocks and round the corner is Pinhay Bay. We're going to try and get around there, but we'll see how we get on. It's a little bit rough going, big boulders, not easy to traverse, but we'll do our best. I'm not sure we're going to get around to Pinhay Bay, but we'll give it a go. The trouble is, some of these boulders are, despite their size, quite precariously balanced. Well, we'll try and get to the corner at least. So lots more ammonites in these boulders. Obviously these are chunks of the pavement. There's a piece that's still in situ, look, with all of its little polygonal cracks, which might have been cracks when this was mud, or it might have been that this was cracked by geological forces after it turned to stone. I'm sure a geologist would know. Now this is interesting because look, we've got a ammonite fossil. That's the sort of fossilized remains of the shell itself, and this is a agate infill here, or a chalcedony infill. Just lovely specimens to look at everywhere we look. Really nice big clear ammonite fossil there. Yeah, oh, Jenny's found another one. Yeah, and again we've got this is this chalcedony infill here. If you were able to cut that fossil out and slice it, you'd possibly find some quite interesting and gemmy type of appearance on the inside there. And this might be the end of a shell, so we've got the kind of face view there. This might be the end view, so yeah, there's the rounded part of the shell there, the rounded part of the other shell there. So this is one that's lying flat in that orientation through the rock, and we can see into the end of the fossil. So it's actually low tide now, and we haven't yet made it to Pinhay Bay because the going is a little bit slower than I expected it to be. So I think we may not get as far as Pinhay Bay. I'm not going to get cut off by the tide. The tide at high tide will come up probably as far as here. These rocks don't look like they get covered by every tide. I think what we'll do is we'll walk to the point and stop and have some lunch. Getting close to the point now. Still finding lovely big ammonite fossils in all of the big rocks here. Haven't really found anything loose. I did find one really poor specimen that was just all crumbly in shale. See, there's a piece of rather poor quality Lyme Bay agate where you can see a little bit of banding in there. It's very coarse banding, but I suppose that's why they call it agate. I don't think it technically is a true agate. It's a kind of banded chalcedony, which is weirdly the definition of an agate, but it hasn't typically got the quality of a finely banded agate. Might stop and have a bite of lunch and turn round. We did bring with us a pasty. The good thing about Lyme Regis is every second shop is a pasty shop, and the pasties are really good. So we picked up a couple of pasties. We'll have those for lunch. Well, I found another piece of pavement, so the going is a bit easier here. And there's Pinhay Bay over there, which you can't get to from the road. So you can't drive down to it, you can't park near it and walk down a footpath. The only way round is across the coast here. I think you probably could scramble down a cliff. I don't think it'd be a very good idea to do that. So there we go, that's Pinhay Bay, but we might not quite make it there. I can see some people already there on the hunt for fossils. They may have come around from the Axminster direction, the other way. But anyway, I think we're going to stop in a minute, have a bite to eat, and probably turn round. There's a strong onshore wind today, which means the tide will come in faster than it would otherwise. So I think we'll find a flat rock to sit on somewhere up there and have our pasties. There are also some amazing rock pools here. Look at that, completely little self-contained rock pool when the tide's out. That's a little world of its own. That's a little world of its own. And of course bigger ones too. I see fish darting about in here. I'm sure there's plenty of shore prawns, sea anemones. I can see a sea anemone just over there at the waterline. I expect we'll see it. Yeah, there's one there as well. Here's a trick I like to do actually with sea anemones. Watch this. So this one's all closed up at the moment, but if I just splash it with a bit of water like this, we'll trick it into thinking that the tide is coming in. And so just splashing it with some oxygenated water like this. I might have to put the camera down so I can use two hands. We'll trick it into opening up a little bit. Didn't happen as much as I hoped there actually. Often when you do that they open right up. This one's obviously wise to that game. Right, so we're going to head back across the rocks now, back towards Lyme Regis before the tide comes in. It's really constantly blowing, so we're definitely going to sleep well tonight, including the dog, who's exercising her jaw as much as anything else. Oh, look at that. I keep seeing things like this, which I thought was going to be a piece of this pink agate, but it's not. That's the red colour on there is algae. What's interesting here is the pyrite nodules. That's a piece of iron pyrite. but they've got a brown colour, they've rusted. The way these sandcastle worms have kind of cemented some of these rocks in place, some of these big loose rocks, they've all grown sort of around them. Gives the whole place a really alien kind of feeling. This is certainly a very different beach. It's a very interesting, very round rock over there. I would not be surprised if that one there has got something interesting inside of it. Either a very large kind of chalcedony, so it might be like a very large geode type of thing, or it might be a nodule that's got an ammonite in the middle. And the flints here, some of these flints are interesting as well because they're a lot more orange and yellow than what I'm accustomed to seeing. So that, I think, is a kind of flinty, cherty material, but it's a lot more orange here than what I'm normally used to seeing. There are some really monster limpets here. Look at that one. It's about 5 centimeters across. And again, look at those. Huge things. Now, I have eaten limpets before. You can knock them off the rocks and cook them. They are sea snails. They taste great. Texture of chewing rubber bands. And look at how closely the perimeter of this shell, this limpet shell, fits the rough rock, the bumpy rock. And that's not an accident. This limpet has grown and that's where it lives. And it will go off and graze all over this rock and graze algae, and it will come back to this spot and anchor itself there. And so not only has it tailored its shell to fit that rock, but it will have worn away a little bit of the limestone to fit its shell. There's the scar from a limpet that never came back. Perhaps something ate it, or perhaps it didn't get back in time. So you quite often find circular scars on these rocks, which are where limpets used to live. See, there's a piece with a fossil in it. You can see the trace of an ammonite there on the end, and that's small enough that I could carry it home, but I'm not going to. It's too chunky, and it's not a brilliant specimen. But there is a lot of this stuff around, which I'm not sure I'm going to get that piece out. Yeah. This waxy chalcedony. Some nice stripes running through that. That'll probably tumble up quite nicely. Okay, now that's very interesting there. I don't know if we're just looking at something that's the end-on piece of a section of an ammonite or something like that, but it looks very much like some sort of worm thing with antennae. I think we're probably being tricked here by just the side view of something that would be more familiar if we saw it in its regular orientation, but that looks for all the world like the fossil of some marine worm with antennae. And we're back now to the bit where we can find traces of this railway. I don't know what this railway was, so I'll look it up and I'll put a link in the video description to some information about it, and I will put something on the screen. There's probably a Wikipedia article about it, but it looks like there was a railway of some sort across the beach here. Purpose unknown to me at the time of narrating this. So you can see this flow of water here. This means the tide has turned. It's coming in now. So time to step it up. Not far to go though. So not many loose weathered fossils here. I don't know whether that's just because this has been very well picked, or whether it's just that kind of a beach. It doesn't actually seem like a lot of the more solid fossils that weather right out are here, like they are a bit further down the coast at Charmouth. I did find this though. which I think might be a piece of an ammonite, and these zigzag lines here might be the suture lines between the segments in the shell. It has that look about it, and it appears to be a kind of sort of quartz infill. I think that might tumble really nicely, and I'm hoping that those lines there aren't just a surface thing, and that will bring those right out. So I think that one's going to go in the rock tumbler. Lyme Regis, Charmouth is over there, that's Golden Cap, so Seatown and West Bay all the way over there somewhere. In fact, I think those are West Bay cliffs over there in the distance. She sells seashells by the seashore. The shells she sells are seashells, I'm sure. For if she sells shells by the seashore, then I'm sure she sells seashore shells. It's a statue of Mary Anning, famous fossil collector and paleontologist. Discovered, I think, the first complete ichthyosaur skeleton somewhere along here at Lyme. So as I understand it, they have cleared up the landfill spill, although I can still see lots and lots of people down there picking around in the debris. But they have taken away all the scrap metal, I understand. Took away a few tons of scrap metal and debris from the landfill, so hopefully that's a little bit nicer there now. Still lots and lots of people mudlarking down there. I can see a big crowd of them. So that was our trip to Pinhay Bay and Lyme Regis today. I hope that's been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.